Hello, dears. So, you doing well? October energy, do you well? However, since November energy is going to be so much like October energy, then you're already ready for it. So think about October. Is there anything that you would do differently? Maybe not take a dive?
Yeah. I'm not sure of that.
And how would you do it differently? Because you're going to have a lot of that very same kind of thing come up for you through November. And you want to be sure that you don't repeat what you don't want. So although it's always better to be thinking about what you do want and framing it in a very positive way, in this case I want you to look at what you don't want. What about October did not fit right for you? Because you can work now to make sure that that is changed. So what do you want to have different? And it's not, please answer here and confess it all to the world. No, it's just think of it yourself. What do you want different in this month than it was last month? And I will remind you that this only has to do with you. Your responses or reactions, your beliefs, your perceptions, it's not, I want this person to quit doing that. Doesn't work. It's, what do you, as a unique being of love and power, what do you want to be sure you amplify? What do you want to be sure you don't run into? How do you want November to be for you? And I'm actually going to give you a few moments in which I'll be quiet and stare at you while you think about this, because I want you to form this very clearly in your mind. What do you want? Based on the things that you would have changed about beliefs, perceptions, reactions, responses to things that went on over the last 4 weeks. What would you do differently? And I promise you, if right now you are thinking, I would do nothing differently, you're wrong. Just lay that out there right now. There is something in there, because you're cloaked in skin. Every day there's something you would have handled differently. So think about it. And because you're thinking about it now, you're going to remember it for this coming month. And you're going to be able to make use of the energy for positive change rather than repeating old patterns. And that's a really important way to start tonight. Now, take a deep breath and tell me about November. What is November? Thanksgiving, yes. Grateful, grateful, grateful. Diwali, yes. Light, the amorphous quality of life as a whole. The election. Ooh, a very important election, yes? Not so much.
Put it in perspective for us.
Well, it's kind of like you can glue together that piece of pottery you dropped, but it's still a broken piece of pottery. Sorry to be so excited about your political system. So yes, you have an election coming up. It's a birthday month? Not? All right. Any other holidays?
Black Friday. It's the day everybody goes crazy, goes out to shop for Christmas, the day after Thanksgiving. I don't, but a lot of people do.
The store's getting up.
It's when all
Well, I think that should be a national holiday, sure.
stores make a lot of money, and that's why
they
they're
get
in the
into
black. That's why it's called Black Friday.
Ah,
Why do they call it black?
Because that's when the stores get in
It
the
was
black.
asked when the stores make a lot of money.
Because it goes in the black, yeah.
Puts them into the black.
Instead of Red Friday, it's the Black Friday.
well, good. And with that economic idea that puts money into the system, that's a good thing. Hey, all right, Black Friday. I need to put that on my list. It wasn't there.
That's also a day of insanity where people will fight over things that aren't just insane, not worth it. Often, almost every year, somebody's been killed in a stampede at some big store as they're trying to get their deals. I'm probably not supposed to be talking like this, huh? Oh, sorry. Black Monday, that's better. It's online. No stampede.
Cyber Monday.
No Cyber Monday.
Have you ever noticed that shopping is such a grand opportunity to find out about people? You can see them when they're tired, when their expectations have or have not been met. You often, for any of you that have ever worked in retail, you know that you see both the best and the worst of what humanity has to offer. So why don't you take a moment just now and send a little preemptive energy to all of those who are going to be working with the public on Black Friday. And to all those who are going to be getting out of the house and doing their holiday shopping on Black Friday. That it be the most easy and peaceful one that there's been so far, because everybody is functioning at their best and highest. I like having you send energy to things like that because you'll be able to see it. You'll see the results of what you're putting energy to. And November is always good for that, for seeing what you have been doing. It's a time that you start getting some introspection about the year coming to an end. You start making your lists about what needs to be done. It's a time in which completions are either going to haunt you, I've got to get all this done, or you're going to feel really good about it. Look how much I have gotten done. And perhaps that leads to the gratitudes that show up on that, last Thursday? Some Thursday deep in the month, in which you give thanks. It's the opportunity to realize I don't have so much left to do as I thought, or I've got so much more to do than I thought. This is a month to make plans. But it's also the month of the holiday that apparently nobody thinks about too much, Veterans Day. Now, what is Veterans Day about?
Honoring those who have fought in wars.
Well, they did not have to fight in a war.
They're celebrating their service.
Yes, yes. Celebrating those who have chosen to serve others.
They did not choose.
Yeah, not
That's right.
The draft.
I still would go that ultimately everything you do is because you've made a choice. You did not move out of the country as soon as you received the letter that it was your time. You went ahead. Do you still have the draft?
That's why we have so many wars.
What did you say?
I said, that's why we have so many wars now.
Because you do not have a draft?
Yeah. If everyone's sons are being drafted into the army, people.
Ah, yes, of course.
Now it's the professional army, and they've chosen to do that rather than being forced into it.
Well, I want to give you the story of what might not be every soldier's life, but certainly is a soldier's life. So, once upon a time, in a city far, far away, there was a young person who really felt a desire to help out in a time of need. Additionally, doing so was going to open, they hoped, doors to greater learning, opportunities to gain different perspectives, to get some camaraderie, to enjoy the community of those that were going through the same thing. So this person joined up. And of course, when they joined up, everything they knew changed radically. For a while, anyway. The first thing was training, is boot camp, yes? Boot camp. So what happens in boot camp? They issue you boots. What else?
Physical fitness.
Physical fitness.
Big part.
Tell me a little about physical fitness.
Well, every morning they have to get up and do their what do they call it? Personal exercise. I guess it's not PE that way, but
T.
yeah. So they have to get up at the crack of dawn all together, and they have to go through rigorous physical training.
Well, now, what would be the purpose of everybody having to get up at the crack of dawn?
It's a work of unity.
All right,
They want them to work together.
all right, that's true.
And also, boot camp is about just crushing the ego, the personal ego, and not thinking of self, but thinking of the team, the whole unit.
Yes, yes, that as well.
It's about creating a structure which they are expected to adhere to.
Yes, yes. It's about creating that sense that here is the routine that's going to work for this time. And that routine is going to involve getting up at the crack of dawn, such an interesting phrase, and doing physical training. So the physical training, what would be the purpose of that? Obviously, there is a certain amount of it to do with how many push-ups can you do and how much running can you do.
Well, it gives them, it teaches them or gives them endurance because of the challenges, the physical challenges
Good,
that
good.
they're going to be presented with.
Builds endurance, very good.
Instills confidence that they can meet the demands.
Excellent, instills confidence, eh?
They teach you how to take orders without questioning.
Yes, indeed, very much. Not so much in the physical exercise department, but generally speaking within that whole time of boot camp. Survival, yes. It's also a means of weeding out those who are not going to be capable of doing what is needed. Boot camp. A lot of physical exercise, a lot of learning to follow orders without question. A lot of team building. A lot of surpassing your views of what you could and could not do. And that's huge. That's huge. Boot camp, where deep friendships are made. And also where those who are not going to be able to fit what is needed are shifted into, a different line of work. After boot camp, there usually is a small period of training, depending upon what direction the individual wanted to go. She might be wanting to be in the infantry, and this one might be wanting to be in the communications arenas, and this one, they might need a little extra training for that. So they go through a small period of training. Now, if you have a country that's in war, there may not be that period of training. There might be the assumption that all our foot soldiers, if you have that phrase in today's military. Nevertheless, the opportunity to gain through experience is what comes up next. Now, let's shift it altogether to those who have been serving in a time of war. Now, the first thing that I want you to remember is that there is always war on your planet. I can't remember a time of peace. At the very least, on a tribal or clan level, at the very most, nation against nation. It's really kind of sad. But some of those wars are very well known, and some of them are not spoken about. They happen in the dark of night, if you will. And you have some of those going on right now. So if there is an actual war going on, let's say that your infantry trainee goes off to war, what happens then? Well, the first thing that happens is everything that they went through in boot camp is going to come up. Everything. Everything they got, they aced, yes, is going to do them well. Everything they weren't so good at, they're either going to catch up with really quickly or have a struggle with. What else happens in conflict? Now, are we talking conflict that you bring your gun to, or a conflict that you open your mouth about?
Well, in war, it's one that you bring your gun to.
But there may be both. Because nobody who serves in the military gives up their autonomy altogether. They still have opinions. But sort of like in boot camp, if this is somebody whose opinion regularly clashes with the ideals of the mission itself, they end up serving elsewhere, don't they?
They learn to adapt what they learned in boot camp
Yes.
to the reality that they're facing at that moment.
Absolutely.
I would imagine they shift into survival mode and that fear becomes pretty present.
For some, yes, absolutely. And it's one of those opportunities that you learn exactly what your instinctual brain has to say. When you are truly fighting for your life, you learn pretty quickly what your priorities are about. And that's a very good thing, but better still if you learn it without having to be fearing for your life.
Borrowed lessons.
Aye.
Very strong bonds are created.
Yes, indeed. That family created in boot camp through we're all in this together, we will help each other, teamwork, expands, ideally. Because again, there's always a choice. There is always that opportunity to express your individualism and be a loner, to not be a part of the team, to even choose those jobs that will ensure that you socialize the least possible, that you are not having to look at anybody else to help you with your job, that you're only responsible for you. And the good news is that a lot of the military has positions like that, and that sometimes is the place that those who were sent to a different job early on get to go. That can be helpful. You're in the war zone. You are figuring out your tools. The tools of communication, the tools that will keep your life going. You are learning to use them, not overuse them, and not underuse them. Hopefully, by this point, your survival mechanisms and the tools that you have become a part of you. And you don't need to think twice before you do what is needed to complete that mission or keep you alive. So you you go to war, or you go to more training, and you go to whatever post you're going to, and you serve and you serve and you serve until finally, after a year or 2 years or 20 years, or it's time for discharge, time to no longer be in the military. What do you do then?
You retire. Maybe you want to retire.
Right? You stop.
Sometimes those ones
Yeah.
are not necessarily prepared to really go back to civilian life because it's so different sometimes, or because of what has happened.
And that tends to be truer for those during wartime who have been through pretty difficult situations. Yes, that's very true. On the other hand, there are those who simply go to where they want to be instead of where they have been transferred to, and they start up a new life. Maybe they get a job and they do another 20 years of work before they retire again. They have a family, they watch their children grow up. Hopefully they enjoy life. And of course, every day they look at all of the people around them and they think, you did not thank me for my service today. You did not realize what I have done for you. You've got this election coming up, and that's because of what I have given to you. And that's why they often are looking at you with a scowl on their face, right? No, not at all. Not at all. Most who have been in the military get what their service was about. And they were not doing it so that you would thank them, although certainly that's a very good thing to do. They did it because it was the right thing for them to do, and it gave them what they needed at the time. Veterans Day has to do with recognizing those who have served, willingly or not, who have given of themselves for a greater mission. Now, I am sure that many of you are connecting dots here and already thinking, well, guardians come with a mission. And so perhaps it is an opportunity to think about that kind of service as well. And you'd be absolutely correct. But I want to take this story just a little further. Our military person is going to have a different beginning now, all right? So once upon a time, on a planet far, far away, there were those who were powerful beings of light, who recognized their connection with all things at all times, who followed the laws of love and one, who were following a long and beautiful path of the evolution of spirit. And they were capable of functioning as a full unit on their own. And what I mean by that is, instead of one person doing this and one person doing that and one person doing that in order to make a mission work out, this energy was capable of extending itself to this and this and this, sort of maybe like an octopus. Putting forth its arms to, this example's going to fall downhill real fast. I just realized that it put them out in order to either kill prey or be prey and run. But all right, we'll go with that for a moment. And could put itself out into different times and locations, and even different dimensional realities, and put itself out into different kinds of skin and species. And it looked around the great galaxies. It didn't have to look around at all. Earth was screaming so much you pretty well could just look over and say, there, that one needs me the most. But for the story, looked around and said, where could I be most useful? Because a part of my ascendancy program is to serve others. So where could I best do that? And far away, there was a tiny planet that was kicking and screaming with everything it had, but was moving through a time of transition. And that transition was going to be the perfect opportunity to create a new mission and move into that place. When it looked at that place, it also looked to see what are the options here. It looks like in order to make this happen in 2018, it might be a little handy if there was a little support and help here in 1950 and some support here in 1850. And maybe this kind of person would be useful over there in 2020 to help bring together that which was done in 2018. And so it projected itself into all of those arenas, all of those missions, all of those opportunities with the desire to serve. Well, of course, coming into form of any kind is a boot camp all itself, don't you think? And there is a lot to be learned about what you are and are not capable of doing, what you are and are not willing to do, about creating community, about pushing your limits and the good it can do and the difficulties you encounter. You learn a lot about doing what is needed But in this boot camp, as hard as I've tried, it's not about doing what is needed because you were told to. It's just doing what's needed because you want to. It's about learning that the mission comes first and the ego comes second. The guardian as warrior. So this individual has expressed itself through time and space. And sometimes boot camp was too much. And they went off deciding there was something else they wanted to do, and this was not it. Now, if you relate that back to a military soldier in today's military, when that young person is going through boot camp and they realize this is not for me, what are the reasons they are probably realizing that?
But it's too hard.
It's too hard. It's too much. There are repeated failures and not enough successes. And even before the drill instructor or head of the boot camp or sergeant says, this isn't for you, that soldier has had a pretty good idea of that, don't you think? Mm-hmm. This is not for me. This is not what I signed up for. That's probably where that very phrase came from, isn't it? I'm out of here. And they mentally shut off, even though physically they are continuing because they must until they are not there anymore. And in any kind of service, there is that same issue. This is not what I signed up for. And you know it, not because of all the successes you're having, but because of the failures that are chewing up your view of yourself. I can't do this. I'm letting everybody down. I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not fast enough, I don't have the I don't. In every good military movie, I am all over the place tonight, aren't I? In every good military movie, there is that one who had a hard time, who did not see her or his value. Maybe even the one who did not get good attention from others. That was a nice way to say that, right? Positive attention from others. And yet in the movies, somehow, everything falls together in such a way that they become the hero. They do just the wrong thing at the right time and it works out, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way spiritually. Darn. Hate it. And again, the reason for that is because you have choice. Before you ever find out that you have hero potential, you give up and leave. Before you ever put yourself into that right time, wrong behavior, turn out a hero because it was exactly what was needed at the time, you've already backed off. It's that free will thing. So in the ascendancy program, you don't very often have misfit heroes like you do in Hollywood. But in the ascendancy program, because the work is all about a greater oneness, and more important, because that originating energy doesn't just have one spoon in the pot. Iron in the fire, something like that. That sounds better. Doesn't have just one iron in the fire. It has the one in 1950 and the one in 2020 and the one in the 14th dimension and the one and where one doesn't make it, that greater purpose rules. And it learns from what wasn't working right here and puts it into those other projections. It is very much a fail-safe. Saying that on an energetic level, there is no failure. And although not failing isn't the same as succeeding, sometimes that can be good enough. So, our particular spiritual warriors are looking at the planet Earth, and one of the very first things that they notice is that there is a great grid that surrounds that planet. And they look more closely, and they see that in actuality there are two great grids surrounding that planet. And one of them does not appear to be absolutely connected, and the other one seems to have a multitude of, for want of a better word, a multitude of military presence about it. And it becomes very, very clear right away to that soul choosing Earth, this must be a very special place. It seems to be double guarded. Why is that? And starts asking around, what the heck is it about that little planet there? It has two grids and one of them isn't all the way together. And then there's another grid and it looks like it's some kind of protection. What's that about? And they began finding out a story that they would have never heard if they were not actually put into place to see it for themselves. And that is the story of a planet that had so much potential that its dimensional reality was shifted so that it might grow in the ascendancy process on its own, without the help that so many have received in mass. But instead, that help was only given a few at a time. A few very strong souls with the purpose of helping to shift the transition point into a positive flow of awakening and activation into the greater one. And that, as that function has been slowly changing and growing in positive ways, that grid has slowly been shifting back into place, creating more open doors. But those open doors established a second grid. The doors are open. You're free to come and go. And then a wall goes up. Political references aside. And that wall is more or less guardian. How many of you have ever been on a military base? Do you just saunter in?
Nope.
Here I am, everybody.
Gates,
There are gates.
guards.
And more than that, there are guards at the gates. And those guards want to know what your business is. And they want to be sure that if you say that you have business with this person, that that person is expecting you. They are a line of security, making sure that, to the best of their abilities, the safest people intent will be allowed. Now, there is surrounding this planet a second grid that was formed not all that long ago, even as you would count time. And it was specifically designed to be those gatekeepers. That even though it was possible to come into the planet or leave from the planet, that only that which was a part of the greater plan would be there, would be allowed in, so to speak. But there was a greater reason, even more than that. And I want you to stop for just a moment and to think about this universe and think about the things that I've taught you about the way this universe functions, about life force. I want you to think for just a few moments, realign yourself with that idea of life beyond humans and earth, and of the spiritual progression into the greater oneness. The biggest reason that wall was created was to make sure you did not get out. Not you as a guardian, but the very violent tendencies of humanity to nuke first and talk later. To have power over as a means of power of. Humanity is still at a fairly dangerous point, and you don't want to put that out into what is essentially, for the most part, not every nook and cranny, but for the most part, a pretty benign set of civilizations. Those who make it through the gate have to be at one with the greater purpose, which is the completion of the plan for this planet, the ascendancy of this planet into sacred status, and all life force on it into the greater one, the greater whole. And only those higher frequency energies that had chosen that mission were allowed through the gate. And those of you who enjoy the night skies may have occasionally seen some of those patrols. Veterans of foreign wars takes on a whole new meaning. When you move it to a galactic, a universal version. Guardians come here to help this world change for the better. And yes, some don't make it through boot camp. It is a shock. Not only is more expected of you than you ever thought, but it's only because you're thinking through that human brain instead of the light you are. But suddenly you're thrust into an arena in which you have choices that never occurred to you before. Because really not much occurred to you. That's a different story altogether. But when you're a function of the one, you have access. So you don't think the way humans do. Some make it through boot camp and are given their mission. And some become heroes. And some simply, quietly put in their time. And some don't ever make it that far. Some die in the line of duty, and ultimately, of course, all are going to release the form they're using. But I can pretty much promise not a one does it, because once it's all over, humanity is going to throw garlands and have parades and express gratitude 1,000 different ways, 1,000 times a day. They did it because they could not do anything else. Because although they were on the planet and not protecting the second grade, they were just as much warriors and soldiers. As those races of other who are warriors and soldiers. Here to serve. Because the idea that every tentacle succeeds in its mission, that every function of life force within that planetary dimensional system will return with all its experience to the information field, the source field, the one, is worth it. Soldiering is not easy. It involves a lot of doing what you really don't want to do. At times you really would rather be doing something else. And getting no credit for the sacrifice you have made to do it. When you start out in boot camp, you're looking to see what you can get out of it. You're looking to see how this world will serve you. But by the time you've made it through boot camp, if you have, you've learned that it's not about serving yourself. It's about being your best self in order to serve, and that is true in the American military, in the Indonesian military, in the Earth's military, as it is as warriors for the greater one. You have purpose here. You have chosen this mission. And the memories of boot camp remain with you. Why did I choose this? But you take what you have learned and you use it for the greater mission. Guardians are not serving themselves. They are serving the intent of the potential this world can be. As it is expressed through the awakening and activation into the spiritual presence of every function of life force on this planet. Stems, trunks, 4 legs, 2 legs. Human. Bonobo. Doesn't matter. Every function of life force on this planet. And this is not only the learning time, it's the doing time. Because once again, your planet is at a crossroads and you know it, you feel it, you know it. And this planet needs its warriors. It needs you. Working with, for. Working with, for. And that's with others for the completion of the plan, and not with your own version of how it works for yourself. You are coming now to the end of your year. Now, I'm actually at the beginning of one. But you are coming to the end of your year. And I think that this is a great time, particularly with your Veterans Day coming up, to take a look and think about the mission you're on. To think about, well, I'm going to go ahead and say it, the kind of soldier you are. Because you are that. How are you doing on your mission? And to swing it back to what I discussed about November earlier, what do you wish you'd changed? What do you no longer want to be dealing with? How would you make things better? Sometimes it's really good for any soldier to go back to basics for a bit. Get those good habits going again. Get a positive routine happening. Remember your purpose. Now, there's a lot going on in November. Yes, your eating holiday is one of them. And just because I always do, I will remind you to think about all those things you're grateful for in your life. And come to your eating holiday filled with gratitude that you're in a world that has eating holidays, which is pretty big. That you live the life you do at the time you're living it. That you have so much to offer. That you've come this far and done this much. Have gratitude. But before that holiday comes, you're going to pass Veterans Day. And that one's coming right up. It's an opportunity to relate on a more cosmic scale. To remember your more cosmic purpose. To take up the banner again for the purpose of one love. Apparently, I'm supposed to say, be the best that you can be. All right, be the best you can be.
I think it's a recruiting slogan for the Army.
Years ago. Be all that you can be.
All right, so yes, that too. Do not forget that your mission goes far beyond the current state of things. The current blood and bones and chemical and skin that this is. Beyond the politics of this time. It goes beyond what this illusory, said with a laugh, reality appears to be about. You are sitting at the Source Convention, and you don't have the nosebleed seats. You're right there where the action is. And you are watching over this projection of yourself. And cheering you on and shedding a tear occasionally. And now and again, sticking a little tentacle in front of you to redirect that path. And sometimes out and out, just bombing everything. You are needed. You are vital. You can do more than you think. You are more powerful than you can imagine. You are light and you are love. And you can do this. And I am grateful for you. And I want you to be grateful for you, for this, for the why. and how. Important month. Look in the mirror.